Americans for Fair Taxation presents the Weekly Chairman's Report, written by Steve Hayes, president of Americans for Fair Taxation, and recorded by Bob Paxton, a volunteer with the Florida Fair Tax Educational Association. And now, this week's Chairman's Report.
Hello, I'm Bob Paxton with the AFFT Chairman's Report for Friday, April 12th, 2024. An elite openly stating that it's okay to break the law if they agree with the lawbreaker. Last week, the Chairman's Report examined a poll done by Scott Rasmussen. While it's not the complete answer, it provides a revealing look at a group of Americans that he calls America's Elite 1%, defined as people who make over $150,000 a year, live in densely populated areas, and have postgraduate degrees. Again, here's some of the key results of that poll. The elite 1% represent 1% of the population and are extraordinarily influential. A heavy concentration of them went to one of 12 elite schools. About half of the policy positions in government and half the corporate board positions in America are held by people who went to one of those dozen schools. These people live in power centers, either Manhattan or D.C. They shape the mainstream media narrative. And regarding the issue of cheating to win an election, only 7% of all voters approve of cheating to win, but that number rises to 35% among the elite 1%. However, among the elite group that talks politics every day, an astounding 69% say that cheating is a perfectly acceptable way to ensure that they don't lose an election. Now, most Americans believe that we don't have enough freedom, but over 50% of the elite and 70% of the politically involved elite say that we have too much freedom. 70% of the elite trust the government to do the right thing and believe that we'd all be better off if they were in charge of making decisions for the rest of us. Now, many readers of this report felt that the poll results were disturbing, but no one saw clear examples of this type of elite 1% thinking. The headline of the March 25, 2024 article by Kenny Stansel that appeared on Slate.com is Why Biden Should Pardon the IRS Whistleblower Who Leaked Trump's Taxes. While my first thought was that the author couldn't possibly be serious, it turns out that he was quite serious and made the following points. There's a strong moral case for President Joe Biden to pardon Charles Littlejohn, the former IRS contractor who was recently sentenced to 5 years in prison for leaking the tax returns of Donald Trump, Jeff Bezos, Elon Musk, and other billionaire tax cheats. It's only thanks to Littlejohn that we now know exactly how little the wealthiest people in the U.S. pay in taxes, and how much they're squirreling away much-needed revenue through habitual tax avoidance is harming their fellow Americans. That's a far more serious crime than the one committed by Littlejohn, who risked his freedom to expose a key facet of the rampant inequality subverting our democracy. Biden should pardon Littlejohn because it would be wrong to let the 38-year-old languish behind bars for revealing fraudulent and in some cases illegal behavior that was never prosecuted, but also because it's good politics. Now, to clarify, I'm not advocating that Littlejohn be pardoned strictly for political reasons. There are straightforward moral grounds for Littlejohn's absolution. U.S. laws shielding tax information from public scrutiny are unjust. His actions benefited the public by revealing outrageous facts that the ruling class would rather have kept hidden, and in any case, a 5-year sentence for leaking this information is indefensible. Littlejohn's unmasking of grotesque tax inequality, by contrast, was an attempt to make the U.S. more democratic at considerable risk to himself, and that makes him one of the greatest political heroes of our time. In conclusion, according to Mr. Stansel, it's all right to violate the confidentiality laws governing our federal income tax returns if the only people harmed are the rich. He alleges, with no evidence, that Littlejohn's leaking of federal tax returns was justified because it revealed the fraudulent actions of the wealthy. Fraudulent? Are you kidding me? The Internal Revenue Code is one solid mass of exemptions, exclusions, loopholes, credits, and other provisions that the ruling elite have created, not just to influence people's decisions and behavior, but also to benefit those who can and do make large political contributions. People like Trump, Bezos, and Musk know that the IRS is watching their every move. But unlike the rest of us, they have rooms full of tax experts guiding their every financial move. These experts are highly paid to make sure that their clients are getting every break to which they're legally entitled. But they're also making sure that every deduction and credit they take is proper and can be defended if challenged by the IRS. Political considerations made Mr. Trump a particularly appealing target. But even after his political foes eagerly analyzed his tax returns, no one has alleged that Mr. Trump cheated. They had to reluctantly admit that everything he did to reduce his tax liability was perfectly within the law. He paid exactly the amount that he legally owed. Mr. Stansel, you're opening a dangerous door. If it's okay to leak confidential data because someone thinks it accomplishes a greater good, just where do you draw the line? Would it be all right to leak the tax returns of all NRA members because someone at the IRS believes that citizens owning guns is dangerous? Would it be okay for someone at the IRS who is pro-life to leak the tax returns of everyone who donated to Planned Parenthood? When we file our annual federal income tax returns, we include information about our finances that even others in our family don't know, and certainly no one outside the family knows either. People of all party affiliations and political persuasions are entitled to the confidentiality that current federal law grants them. Advancing either side's political agenda is not a legitimate reason to compromise that confidentiality. Now, while many of us believe that Mr. Stansel's recommendations are irrational, the comments on his article clearly show that many others agree with him. The elites are saying it's okay to violate the law if they agree that your intentions are good. Now, if Little John had leaked only the income tax returns of large Democrat donors, it's highly likely that Mr. Stansel would not be advocating for a pardon and would probably be attacking the 5-year sentence as not nearly being long enough. No wonder these elites don't want to see the fair tax become law. Under the fair tax, individuals do not file tax returns of any kind, and the only people that know how much you make and how you allocate it is your employer and you. Mr. Stansel and your allies, if you want to increase taxes on the wealthy, then pass the fair tax. While the federal income tax code is riddled with tax breaks for the wealthy, the fair tax makes the wealthy pay as they spend their wealth. While the wealthy may spend millions of dollars each year and arrange their affairs so that they owe little or no income tax, there's no getting around the fair tax. Just like all the rest of us, the wealthy will have to pay the fair tax on all of their retail purchases of new goods and services. The elite 1% and their minions, like Mr. Stansel, are frantically attacking the one real solution that allows us to remain citizens, not subjects, the fair tax. The fair tax is simple, non-invasive, but most of all, it works. The fair tax also eliminates the elite's ability to use the federal income tax code and the IRS to bludgeon anyone who disagrees with them or who dares to disobey or even question their directives. The solution? Pass the fair tax. Now, why would D.C. pass the fair tax and give up an almost unlimited source of donations? Well, they won't, at least not voluntarily. The only way they will is if the rest of us demand it. Isn't it time to end this ludicrous tax collection system and the IRS along with it? Now, there's going to be a vote on the fair tax in the House of Representatives. We now have the opportunity to force all members of the House to show where they stand. They can vote for the present income tax, or they can vote for the fair tax. They can support the corrupt income tax in the IRS, or they can vote to eliminate it. It can't be any simpler than that. They can hide the true cost of their government, or they can pass the fair tax and show everyone the true cost of government on every retail receipt. And finally, they can support the largest transfer of power from government to the people, the fair tax, or they can vote against it. Now, if members think the fair tax needs to be amended to address a problem, then they can propose the change. Don't let them get away with rejecting the entire bill because it has a perceived flaw that can be easily addressed, and don't think for a minute there aren't any flaws in the income tax. Help bring about real tax reform and stop future IRS abuses. By contributing or investing $10.40 a month, you help provide a financial base to Americans for fair taxation. Now, if you can make larger contributions/investments, these will be used not for salaries, as we're all volunteers, but for the needed updates to our economic studies, which will be vital for all future years. Please go to fairtax.org and invest in AFFT. Help us pass the fair tax. It's an investment in your and your family's future.
This has been the Weekly Chairman's Report, written by Steve Hayes, President of Americans for Fair Taxation. Check back every week for news and information about the fair tax, and learn why the fair tax should replace our antiquated federal income tax system. If you'd like to receive a copy of the Chairman's Report in your inbox every week, sign up at fairtax.org.